Okay. All right. Welcome everyone to week 6, module 6. This is the kind of the grand finale to look ahead really into forever or as far into the future as we can. Um, I had in keeping with the theme of M's, this is the only word I found in the English vocabulary that has
Mhm.
anything to do with um, generosity or legacy that starts with an M. So magnanimous is the word. Magnanimity is, I suppose, doing it um, and being it. So this whole module is all about okay. After we have built what we have built in the previous 5, what do we do then? What comes next? And this is a really fascinating topic for me because it's one that I'm the least progressed on out of the 5, and I'm super excited every time I study it and I work on it and I think about it. So there's a lot of really neat stuff that we're going to go over today. Most of it is going to seem kind of new and abstract, but that's okay because it's for most of us it's going to be way out in towards the horizon, But it's good to get a glimpse now because there are pieces we can start to put into place today and throughout the 5 previous modules as we build our generational wealth. All right, my friends. So let's keep cruising. So, quick disclaimer, of course, which we always do for these. This training is for information purposes only. It's not legal, financial, professional advice. As always, please, before making any decisions, seek professional advice within the subject matter, qualified professional, based on your situation, right? So, this is what I've done. Use professionals to customize your strategy. Please, especially for this one, because it gets so sophisticated with tax, legal. I mean, these are subject matters that people literally spend like 8 to 10 years in college for, right? So for us to just think, I can wing it with a little website, little Google, little YouTubes. Please, my goodness, for the sake of you and yours and anyone affected by your decisions, don't try to DIY this. Some of the other ones, definitely you can do a lot more DIY, but this is the one I have to highlight that. Um, you know, don't assume what you read online applies directly to you because that's the key, right? This whole disclaimer is it's customary in these formats and stuff, but it's also here's the key: the word advice shows up here a couple times, and the word advice is always adapted to an individual in specific circumstances, right? So, no, there's no way I could ever create any type of training material. No one could that would adapt and be customized to every individual out there, right? It's impossible. So that's really the practical takeaway for this. No big deal. Okay, so here we are, week 6, magnanimity. It's kind of hard to say, but it's a very important
I get
word,
it.
at least for a simple Texan like myself. So I like the longer one, magnanimous. Um, okay, so what does it mean? Well, it means, again, legacy and generosity. Okay, when you look it up, being magnanimous means being benevolent. It means being generous. And at the end of the day, at the end of our life, at the end of this ride, as we're building whatever prosperity um, we want for our life, you know, it's you know it's all about those that follow us, and hopefully having a resilient, strong, clear, plan to continue what we built. Okay, so that's really what this is all about. So here's the first thought bomb to really kind of drive this home. Since you can't take it with you, the question is, what will you leave behind? Right? Since we can't take it with us when we leave this earth, what are we going to leave behind? Who are we going to leave it to? How are we going to leave it? Right? That, my friends, is what today is all about. Okay, module 6. All right, so here's a quick recap from Module 5. Um, there's 10 investor controls. We talk about active investors a lot throughout this program and how important it is to be one. Well, here are the 10 investor controls because this kind of primes us to kind of get us in the mode of, okay, why do I need to do some of these things? Because, well, it's what the rich and financially successful do, you know? So these are some of those attributes and controls, as we call them. So we control first and foremost over ourselves, right? Discipline and mindset. Next is control over our income and expenses. How are we allocating our financial resources? The third one is control over our assets and our investment types, right? Thankfully, we're free to choose. Um, and hopefully, we are prioritizing and focusing primarily on ideal um, asset classes and investments. Number 4, control over management. Number 5, control over taxes. Number 6, control over your liability and your risk. Number 7, control over your plan. Big part of legacy planning, estate planning is today's subject. So 7, 6, and 7 really apply today. 5, 6, and 7 do. Really 4. I mean, they all tie together eventually, right? But number 8 is control of your information and use. 9, control of your time. And then finally, control of your education and advisors, which, again, hopefully one of my goals and dreams for and purposes of creating this 6-week program is to expand your education, expand your possibilities, give you a glimpse into a whole nother world, so you and your family can have some clarity, and what follows clarity is confidence, you know, by giving you some very powerful, invaluable information, and maybe sharing some advisors that can help you execute and build your plan, right? Okay, so thought bomb number 2. A pound of prevention is worth a ton of cure. That is a key part of today's um, theme and focus, all right? It is astonishing, like anything else. One of my favorite adages I learned early on was the concept of when can you buy insurance, right? You can only buy insurance when you don't need it, right? Right? So it's one of those things like that's what's weird. It's like, well, I don't need it now, so why would I buy it? Like that applies to a lot of parts of life, right? And that makes total sense. But when it comes to insurance, when it comes to contingency planning, when it comes to resilience, right? Legacy planning, estate planning, all this, we can't do it after we pass away, right? We, just like insurance, you can't get in an accident and then call Geico and say, hey, can I get a policy for this totaled truck? Not gonna happen, man. So that's the kind of the common sense concept to kind of keep front and center as we go through today. All right, quick review on some risks, right? Um, both fear and faith require us to what? To believe in something that we can't see. So why does that tie in today? How does that matter? Well, because what we're talking about is looking way out into the future for a lot of us. It could be decades, you know, or even generations. So this is where we have to kind of calibrate our perceptions and check ourselves sometimes, depending on our state of mind and how we perceive some of these things. But both fear and faith require us to believe in something that we can't see. So if you're going to choose one, choose faith, right? Choose faith in proven principles. Choose faith in best practices and the wisdom of those that have come before us, which is, who I've learned from. And what I want to pass on to you guys is all the lessons and blessings, that me and my family have gone through. So have faith in that. Fight fear. And that's a big risk, though. It can hold us back. All right. The real risks in the finance game. Again, quick recap. So obviously taxes are, inflation is, markets. We don't understand them. Okay, if we don't understand them and utilize them to our advantage, they will mop the floor with us, right? They will wipe out anything we ever want to build or have built. All right. But today, a lot of this is about the investor. Some of it's about taxes, some about markets, some of it's about these other factors I'll get to. But we really have to think about ourselves, okay? Because ultimately, we're the ultimate risk factor. So the biggest risk of all is ignorance and inaction, right? Makes total sense, simple concept. And this is just to kind of get us. Let's elevate our attention to and be sensitive to some of these things, because in a moment's notice and the most random act and event can trigger and put us in some of these situations and predicaments um, where we gotta figure out what to do that we're going to cover today. Okay, any of us can find ourselves in those. All right, so again, quick recap from last module 5 on moding the threats and priorities. So whatever is most important, work on that first, right? So that is actual universal principle advice. That's going to be relative to each of our situations. There's no such thing as time management. There's only priority management, right? Yes, colloquially, common, terms, we use the term time management, of course, but I think words matter. And when it comes down to really important stuff, priority management takes the cake, all right? So know the 5 things that bring down us entrepreneurs. This is timeless, my friends. This goes back thousands of years. You can check ancient scripture to today, and it's humbling, and it's also, again, um, can be strengthening to bring this kind of front and center. So we're aware of it. And here they are. Health, can't neglect our health, because health truly is wealth, the ultimate wealth. Debt, got to keep that in check. Divorce, legal messes, and taxes. Those are the 5 things that bring down us entrepreneurs. That's it. If we can have a plan to defend against, avoid, right, these, guess what? We can build perpetual generational wealth, right? And it's not easy, obviously. What we're doing is something very special that, very, very small percentage of the people in the planet ever do. So just be conscious of these 5. Be radical about getting our priorities right, and do whatever is necessary to break down and rebuild our routine so that our routine aligns with our vision and plan for the future and our priorities, right? So whatever is the most important, our routine has to line up with those priorities, whatever those are, at that season of life and business that we're in. All right. Lastly, know your priorities by looking backwards, not forwards, right? In the past month, this is like a reflection thing. In the past month, whatever got the majority of our time, money, and attention, those are our priorities. Proof's in the pudding, right? So that's where, if we know we maybe need to, you know, reduce or eliminate certain things and then increase or add others, and again, that's going to adapt over time, for each of us, no matter what season we're in. All right. Okay. Next thought bomb. Spend pennies today to save bennies tomorrow. It's quite literally, you will see, it is anywhere from a 1000% ROI, so that's a 10 bagger as we say, 10x to 100x ROI on some of these preventative investments. It's really, that's what it is. We don't see it as an investment, but it is an investment in protecting and perpetuating what we have, and what we are all building. Okay, so pennies today will save you bennies tomorrow. All right, so this was what we covered in module 5. When it came to asset, primarily we focused on moding asset protection. We touched on legacy protection, because here's why. Module 5 and module 6 is Obviously, they're very closely related, and there certainly is some overlap. At a certain point, when you go deep enough into asset protection, you're going to, um, include some estate planning and legacy protection as well, because ultimately they all merge together and overlap as they should. So, uh, module 5 is what we covered. Again, you can go back, replay that one. But today, we're really focused on these, the green. All right. The magnanimous part here in module 6 is focused on estate planning and legacy perpetuity. All right. How do we perpetuate our legacy? And again, there's a lot of tools and instruments, strategies, and methods to do that. And these 5 are the main focus for today. Okay. So, what is this all about? Well, again, it's all about how do we take what we've built, okay, and be generous for generations. That's really it. That's it. That's the concept here. And that's going to mean different things to each of us, right, in our families. And that's probably going to change too as we get older and life changes and family changes, right? But to me, this is kind of the grand finale, that rock and chair reflection point. If you can project yourself into your 70s, 80s, 90s, maybe even make it to 100, the way health is going and technology. And what are you going to look back on life? And then what are you going to look forward to of what you leave behind, okay? So that's the concept here, is generosity for generations, because we can't take it with us.
Yeah.
All right, next thought bomb. When did Noah build the ark?
Mhm. Before the flood.
Yeah, that's right, buddy. Before the flood.
Yeah.
Before the flood. Okay, so again, that's the theme for today. We got to be proactive on some of these big things. It's going to be overwhelming. That's why we chunk it down and prioritize based on our situation and what's the biggest hole, right? Like, we understand that for some of our previous jobs, you had to triage and prioritize maids. Some of them would say maids. Uh, casualties or urgent, important situations. It's the same thing, in this game. Is just okay. What's the priority? What's the sequence? And then work through that on an individual basis. Okay. But we are going to cover a lot of stuff. So you can look as far ahead as you can, and as high as you can, so oh, okay, it's possible, right? This is doable. That's how they did it, right? When you think about, families like, the Rockefellers, the Fords, the Carnegies, right? Like epic, you know, type of multi-generational wealth. You're gonna get a glimpse into the specifics on how do they um, how do they do it. Okay, so again, module 6, magnanimous. Here is number 1. We're gonna start right here. A revocable living trust. Okay, well, what is that? Well, the purpose is to avoid probate. It also provides privacy and control. So here in a little bit, we're going to dive into some case studies, and I'm going to show you guys like real numbers of how bad probate is. For most people, most families, probate is it's almost like, I guess this is a really ornery, blunt, yeah, like, is a DUI avoidable, right? Yes. Does it happen a lot to a lot of people? Of course. But is it 100% avoidable? Yes. So probate is like that in estate planning. It is unfortunate and is 100% avoidable. You can prevent it. It's actually relatively inexpensive to do, as you'll see, and then the ROI is, unbelievable. So the structure is a legal entity that holds title to your assets during your lifetime. Okay, so some of them are during your life, some are after. Okay, but at RLT, that's it. The key features of RLT, again, first and foremost, it avoids probate, keeps your affairs private. It allows seamless asset transfer upon death or incapacity. Right? We got to think about that because again, life happens. You never know; it can hit us any time. The good news is too, it's a versatile trust. You can hold title to homes, LLCs, bank accounts, and much more. Okay, so for future reference, that's what a RLT is. Um, Here's some more on a revocable living trust. Pro tip on it. You can fund the trust with all your major assets, real estate, accounts, businesses, etc. And you can use successor trustees to ensure continuity, right? Successor trustees is kind of like an account beneficiary. You know, when you set up something, you set up a beneficiary, whether it's life insurance or any other account, because in the event of our absence or incapacitation or death, who does that go to? That's kind of what a successor trustee is. Okay. Number two is an irrevocable trust. And there's several types. We're going to cover some of them. So the purpose is estate tax reduction, asset protection, and generational planning. Okay. And here's the structure. Trusts that cannot be changed or revoked. Now there's some exceptions to that, of course. Like a lot of things in life and certainly in the legalese world. But that's the idea. Idea is they live up to their name. Irrevocable trust is they can't be changed or revoked. Okay, so it's almost like, hey, I'm putting this basically in stone. You know, maybe there's some exceptions to it, but that's the purpose of an irrevocable trust. Okay. Now here are some examples. So an ILIT, irrevocable life insurance trust, it keeps your life insurance out of a taxable estate. That's nice. The next one, a GRAT, a GRAT, Grantor Retained Annuity Trust. You can shift future growth to your heirs with minimal tax. See, that's the thing when we think about all these assets and these investments and things that our estate owns and our businesses own and our, we own. Okay. Again, what is the biggest, the two biggest wealth robbers is taxes and inflation. So from now, as we're building, as we're making money, as we're managing our money, as we're multiplying our money, we have to keep taxes and inflation factored in front and center because it will wipe out, okay, any gains and growth that we're striving for. Well, on the back end, so to speak, or at the end of life and to plan for the generations, again, the government comes in and can grab a ridiculous amount from our estates and rob our heirs, right? So there are ways, you're getting a glimpse into those, where guess what? Because the rich write the rules, right? They're going to always write the rules in their favor. We just got to know how to read the playbook, right? How do we read the rules of the game? That's what you guys are getting a glimpse at, okay? So the IDGT is intentionally defective grantor trust. You can use to freeze value and shift growth. So you can freeze value on some assets, meaning because maybe strategically that is going to benefit your heirs, right? So you see how much flexibility you can shift future growth and reduce tax, or you can freeze the value and shift the growth. I mean, it's pretty cool stuff, right? And again, this stuff gets really advanced and sophisticated and complicated. That's why ultimately you got to sit down with the pros. I have some recommendations, introductions I can make for y'all of the people I've hired and trusted, so I know them. Next one is QPRT, Qualified Personal Residence Trust. Remove your primary home from the estate, right? To kind of compartmentalize casa de family, All right. Next, here's a pro tip on these. Work with an attorney and a CPA to design the right irrevocable trust based on your asset level and tax position. Again, it's all case by case specific. But now you're getting some vocabulary. Now you're getting some concepts. So when you do sit down with your team of advisors, you're going to ask some really intelligent questions, right? And guess what? That's one of the principles of success. If we want better answers, what do we got to ask? Better questions, right? So this is why this program is so powerful, especially this real high level sophisticated stuff that, again, none of us, at least I'm not going to law school or getting an accounting degree anytime soon to figure this out. I'm paying pros, Okay, next, LLCs and LPs. Yeah, the good old simple entities a lot of us have or are familiar with. So the purpose is asset protection, then lawsuit insulation, and then generational wealth transfer. Yeah. See, it's not just, oh, I don't want to get sued and I can, shut it down and bankrupt it, whatever. Yeah, sure. I mean, during our building years, right, it has that purpose and power, and benefit. But even down the road, it has these, right, long term, um, incredibly invaluable benefits, and uses. So structure, you can use LLCs or FLPs, family limited partnerships, to hold assets. Again, it's all about compartmentalization, strategic compartmentalization. Here's some benefits. You can protect your real estate and businesses from personal liability. You can also provide control while gifting partial interest to heirs. Again, at a certain point in a certain age and stage of life, depending on our situation or our heirs, guess what? We can start to peel things off, right, from our portfolio, from our estate, and strategically gift and shift even during our lifetime, right? Because there's a lot of neat benefits to that as well. It can benefit our heirs and benefit ourselves and our estate. It's all just in timing and circumstance based, right? So you can also do valuation discounts that may reduce the estate taxes. Again, you can get creative on freezing the value, maybe doing some discounts and all that, because at the end of the day, you're just looking at each situation and saying, okay, what do I need to throttle? What levers and valves and throttles do I need to adjust so that I am paying minimal tax and minimal risk, right? That's the name of the game. Okay. So here's a pro tip on these. Create holding company LLCs, and you can fund them into your trust for multi-layer protection and privacy. So you're going to see that concept a lot. Like most forms of security, it's not one and done, you know. Okay, number 4, charitable structures. Now this is where it gets pretty exciting and awesome. Okay, so there's a whole slew of them. There's a few of them right there: CRTs, CLTs, donor advised funds, and private foundations. So here's the purpose: minimize taxes, create philanthropy, leave a legacy. Okay, that is what these are all about. Now these are going to really start to you're going to connect the dots and see, oh, this is how some of those, you know, world renowned for hundred or hundreds of years type of families, this is how they did it. Okay, so here's what we're talking about, or here's some options. The CRT is a charitable remainder trust. You can create an income stream to the donor and a remainder to charity. A CLT is a charitable lead trust, so income to the charity first and the remainder to the heirs. A donor advised fund, it's a simplified charitable vehicle with immediate tax deduction. And then lastly, this is one that I'm pretty excited about, is a private foundation. So now you've heard of those. Now you know what they're really all about. You can do a lot. So you can do a lot, right? There's payroll on foundations. There's assets owned by foundations, right? And all these things and trusts and stuff, right? So the private foundation is a family-controlled entity for long-term legacy giving, but it can also create jobs. It can hold assets. Those assets can continue to thrive and be managed and grown, right? So this one is pretty incredible. All right, pro tip on these: combine them, the charitable trusts, with appreciated assets like real estate, stocks, and other things. And when you say stocks, here's what's neat. That could be in public traded company, like you need to pick your favorites, or private shares in a private company, right? Meaning your own businesses or other businesses you own a stake in. And when you do that, you can avoid capital gains and reduce, estate taxes. Okay, so next one is this, and this is a big one. This is another one I'm pretty excited about: dynasty trust and generation skipping trust. Okay, so the purpose is right here: multi-generational wealth preservation. The structure is, special trust designed to benefit multiple generations while avoiding estate taxes at each level. Pretty interesting, huh? So let's see. Here's some benefits. The assets are protected from divorce, lawsuits, and creditors. Sound familiar? What brings down entrepreneurs, right? So you see how we can identify the holes in the armor, so to speak, you know, and then we can start plugging them, you know, through all these different strategies and methods and vehicles. The neat thing too, these things can last for over 100 years, depending on what state you set them up in, and avoid double taxation through generation skipping uh, transfer tax exemption. Again, the rich write the rules, my friends. You think they're going to write the rules so that it backfires and like robs them of their family's wealth? No, right? But you're not going to see it on a billboard. You're not going to see it on a Super Bowl commercial. You're not going to see it at the end cap at Target or Walmart saying, "Hey, protect your." And part of that is because most people, unfortunately, never build much to protect and perpetuate, right? But those of us that do, it's going to be even. It matters it matters uh, to us, right? It means everything to us. So here's a pro tip on these. You can use these in conjunction with LLCs to gift again partial interest and maximize your legacy impact. That's what's neat, right? You can fracture or create fractions and partials of all kinds of assets. Even hard assets. That's what's neat about really get into the flexibility and customization of these things. Okay, of course, pretty basic, but essential. They serve their purpose. We probably use these many times, especially at POA. But number 6 here is power of attorney and advanced directives. So the purpose is planning for incapacitation and medical emergencies. Even power of attorneys, of course, can be as flexible as just in our absence. Hey, I'm on vacation. I'm gonna delegate something to, business partner, family member, my attorney. I'm gonna be in the Maldives and with no internet, whatever, right? So power of attorneys have all sorts of practical stuff. We use them a lot in the military, of course, while we're gone, for our spouse and other family members. Now, here's some components. The durable power of attorney is for financial decisions if we're ever incapacitated. And then a medical power of attorney or healthcare proxy is for medical, emergencies. Um, and then a living will is end of life treatment instructions. Okay, pretty simple, but very important, right? Um, it's how do we document what we'd like to see happen in the event of death or incapacitation, other medical emergencies. So definitely worth having in the toolbox. Here's the key though. We got to keep these things updated and updated copies with our attorney, our trustee, our family, key family members, and then of course even your primary care physician if you have one. All right. You can avoid a lot of carnage, a lot of heartache, a lot of chaos, um, and even loss. Right. So big deal, simple solution. Next, now this is going to resonate with us who own a business. This is very important here. We can set up buy-sell agreements and business succession plans. What does that look like? Well, the purpose is to ensure business continuity and value preservation. Again, we built an asset. So how do we do that? Well, you can structure it by funding with life insurance or cash reserves. You can determine a valuation method, transfer rights, and successors. And of course, is a big one. You can avoid a lot of heartache and headache, and family division by avoiding court battles, asset freezes, and unqualified heirs taking control. So again, as we build what we're all building, thinking about these things and putting them in place as appropriate is huge. All right. All right. Next is we're going to provide a pro tip on this one. Uh, every co-owned business should have a written and funded buy-sell agreement, and then review it about every 3 to 5 years. Makes sense, right? Kids get older, partners change, ownerships change, business grows, um, you know, whatever the case is. Employees come and go, etc. So the business assets change, all that sorts of stuff, right? Where we operate. Um, so that's a good pro tip for these buy-sell agreements and business succession plans. All right. Number 8 is gifting and valuation discounts. So the purpose is we can reduce our taxable estate through strategic lifetime giving. So this is kind of cool. Again, it's a give and a take, right? We get to provide benefit to others now and benefits to the estate later. It's a really beautiful thing. The tools is an annual exclusion gift. Currently, it's about $18,000 for 2024, and the reason it says currently that amount is a lot of these numbers, a lot of the specific dollar amounts, obviously adjust year over year or periodically, just like say IRA contributions, 401k contributions, that sort of stuff, right? Those adjust over time, basically every year. A lot of them adjust every year. But here's some other cool tools to think about: 529 plans, UGMA, UTMAs, and direct medical tuition gifts. The other thing you can do, going back to what we kind of mentioned earlier, fractional interest gifting in LLCs to leverage valuation discounts. So you can give, hey, 1%, 2%, 5%, whatever, of your certain entities and gift that, peel off some of those private shares in the companies that you own, and it can create benefits to your estate and also to those recipients or your family and heirs. Pretty cool stuff, right? All right. Here's a pro tip on gifting and valuation discounts. You can combine lifetime gifts with trust and entity discounts for maximum tax leverage, right? Again, building throughout our life, earning, making, and multiplying, making, managing, multiplying, right? We have to be conscious and aware and factor in taxes and inflation. But on the back end too, when we have a legacy, we don't want any government hands in our cookie jar, dip it in the pot. Okay. So that's where all these tools ultimately culminate together to create the full arsenal and suite of what we all need, to preserve, protect, and perpetuate whatever prosperity we have produced in our lifetime. All right. Number 9, portability and estate tax exemption planning. So the purpose, you can use the full estate tax exemption between spouses, thankfully. Here's some strategy points to consider. You can use the portability election to transfer unused estate tax exemption from the first spouse to die. Okay, just kind of shift things between you and your spouse, depending on who passes away first. You can pair that with a credit shelter trust to protect growth from future taxation. Ooh, that's cool, right? And then the exemption in 2025 projected to drop from 13 million to 6 million. So advanced planning is critical on this. But I will say that at least for real estate, the draft tax bill, I think, so at the federal level, obviously Olympia's lost their minds trying to do crazy stuff. But at the federal level, it looks like there's some good news on the horizon for us small business owners, especially those that do a lot in real estate. We're going to get some, hopefully, extension and continued tax perks from what was drafted and just recently released. So more to come on that throughout this year. Okay, so here is a pro tip when it comes to number 9. You can use disclaimer trusts or AB trust planning for flexible post-death options. Again, there's all kinds of trusts, right? It's kind of wild, how many flavors there are of them. But again, they're all tools in the toolbox, and it's a combination of, from what I've learned, okay, these tools apply to us depending on A, where do we reside, right? What is the people's residence, right? B is, where are our assets located, right? So where is our property or our assets located? And then C is, what other circumstances, right? How are they structured? What type of assets, that sort of thing. So kind of our circumstances and structure is the third piece. That's why there's such a variety of these tools in the toolbox, is because ultimately there's something for everybody depending on your situation, where you're located, right, or reside, where your assets reside, right, because there's jurisdictions, right, different states, different laws, that kind of stuff. Got it? And then there's different levels, meaning like you saw in the previous one, there's actual asset valuation, estate valuation. Is your estate worth 3 million or 13 million, right? Those things matter and all factor in. So kind of cool. That's why there's such a variety at the end of the day. Just like you could see it as a toolbox and say, well, I know for this job I need this, and for that job I need that. And that's how the legal game is played too, right? They're just tools in the toolbox to get a job done, um, based on someone's situations. All right. Number 10, asset protection, trusts, or hybrid trusts. The purpose is to shield wealth from lawsuits, creditors, and divorces. Types: domestic asset protection trusts in states like Nevada, South Dakota, and Delaware. You're going to see a handful of states as you go through, moding modules 5 and then module 6. Excuse me. There are a handful of states. I'll round off. I'll add 2 more to this list: Wyoming and Florida and Texas. Right? There is a handful of states that have very favorable asset protection, privacy, and estate planning, laws, and so you're going to see them, as you dive into this subject, just our program, and then start talking to professionals and doing your own research and stuff. There's literally a handful that, again, have very strong laws and highly favor us, we the people. So it's kind of a beautiful thing. Okay, so again, Nevada, South Dakota, Delaware, Wyoming, Texas, and Florida. Okay, so there's about the handful, 6. So a hybrid DAPTs allow flexibility with third-party beneficiary design. And for those that are interested, there are offshore trusts and asset protection jurisdictions for high risk and high net worth clients. Now, this has changed a lot, I think, in the last 20 something years. Again, hire the pros, talk to them. There's still some benefits to having some things offshore. We've done some stuff offshore, for very specific purposes. But so just keep that in mind. Again, it's a question to ask. Hey, how do we use it? What are the benefits? When is that appropriate for me and my family, my estate, my assets? Is that cool? Again, nothing applies to everybody, except some of these handful of these fundamentals. Okay, next is the pro tip. So you can combine these APTs and hybrid trusts with charging order protected entities. So that's LLCs, FLPs, right? And privacy tools such as land trusts, nominee services for bulletproof planning. Okay, again, it's layers. It's layers and layers and layers. It's like the little Russian dolls. You got the little one and the big one and the wooden Russian dolls. That's kind of the approach to this asset protection and security. All right, here's your thought bomb. Estate planning is not one tool, right? There's no silver bullet or silver shield, right? It's just the world, life, business, finance, right, is just far too complex to have a silver bullet and a silver shield. Makes sense, right? It's just like anything in life, You might have a favorite tool in your toolbox, but you can't do every job with it, right? You might have a favorite vehicle to drive, but you can't do everything with one vehicle, So estate planning is the same, right? It's not one tool, it's a coordinated system. That's a good way to think about it, right? Coordinated system. It's about layers and timing and keeping control while limiting our exposure. What? Exposure to the big five, right? The big five we covered previously. That's the exposure to those five factors that will bring us down if we're not careful, okay? And proactive and prudent. All right, next, we're going to jump into a handful of mistakes that are most common, okay, when it comes to, now we're going to get a little deeper into more specific kind of scenarios. So we're going to cover some common mistakes, and then we're also going to jump into some case studies, okay? Again, just so we can kind of think and maybe put ourselves there and kind of think through this in a practical sense, all right? I'll move through them pretty quick. Okay. Mistake number one is failing to create an estate plan at all, obviously, right? It's like, you know, having some insurance on your automobile or your home is better than having nothing, right? Even if it's not the best, even if it's not, the cheapest or, all that. So here's the mistake. Most people delay or avoid creating a plan, believing it's only for the wealthy or the elderly, right? This is the big one. Going back to, previous slides, okay? We touched on this earlier. It's within reach of everyone. And like I'll throw a number out there, just for relative reference that we can all relate to and all fully grasp. Literally, most people could take their tax return every year and set up their estate. And guess what? They wouldn't even need to do it every year. What most people get in a tax return, call it, I don't know, $2,000 or $3,000 because they got a couple kids and they got a W-2 job or whatever. They don't have to do it every year, but if they just did it for a few years in a row, they could fully set up their family. Kind of crazy, right? It's not six figures, I mean, some things scale, like some of the advanced things, depending on your estate. Yeah, at a certain point, it's going to hit the 5 and 6 figures, right? Because you're talking about 7, 8 plus figures of an estate. Does that make sense? So at a certain point, it's proportional. My goodness, but for some people, just to avoid probate, just to, protect their retirement account, maybe their pension, their home, and, other investments, and just what most people have. Literally, they could just take their tax return for 2 or 3 years and invest that into some estate planning, and it's amazing. You see what I'm saying? So it's like super affordable, super accessible. This is such a big one, man, because it breaks my heart when you got good, honest, hardworking Americans or even immigrants out there doing their best, and then they didn't know a couple things, and you think the government cares? You think the attorneys care? No. They're going to come in and wipe it out and bleed it dry. And you're going to see some crazy numbers here in a second. So, consequence. Probate. It's the first one. Family conflict. Next. Right? So not just hitting the hip national bank, but we're hitting the heart. Right? We're hurting the relationships, and what's the price of that, man? We don't want to be dividing families, and tearing that apart. Unnecessary taxes. Again, government's like, oh, cool, you didn't have a plan? That last piece of pie, that's mine. Could go to the family, but don't mind if I do. Government's always looking for that. And then court appointed decisions. Well, we know judges and attorneys aren't exactly always the most noble, generous people. Okay, so here's some best practices. Create a living trust, have a will, and the power of attorney now, even if your estate is modest, right? That's the takeaway. Okay, we can all start here. So this is one of those things pretty much for everybody. Start here, right? Simple, simple, simple. Very affordable, very accessible. And again, please don't DIY these things to save a few $100. Good Lord. All right. Mistake 2, using a will instead of a revocable trust. See, a lot of people think, oh, I had a will, we're good. Yeah, well, kinda, but you're going to see in a second how that's no bueno. You need one, but it's not one and done, right? So a lot of people, oh, I got a will, we're good. That's it. No, that's the silver bullet theory, right? Or silver shield. So here's a mistake: relying solely on the last will and testament, right? That's what a lot of people do. Oh, a will, yeah, I went online, $57, we're good. or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, oh goodness. I mean, again, I guess something is better than nothing, but again, there's some things are not worth going cheap on. Here's the consequence. It triggers probate, which is public, expensive, and slow. Okay, we're going to see here in a second in these case studies the real pains of probate, and we did actually touch on them back in module 5 as well. Y'all can reference that later. So here's the best practice: use an RLT, revocable living trust, to avoid probate, maintain privacy, and simplify transfers within the estate, within the heirs. Okay. All right. Mistake number 3: not funding the trust. So we have to set up the trust, right? Obviously, step 1, set it up. But then we have to what? Retitle the assets in the trust name. We have to move the assets. It's just like setting up an LLC that doesn't own anything. You know, a trust is the same thing. So we have to put the assets, the title to the assets in the trust name. Okay. So consequence, the trust does nothing, and assets still go through to probate. Right. So again, this is like common DIY type of stuff. Oh yeah, I did that. Well, did you retitle the assets? No. Okay. Well, you have a trust that's basically like an empty bucket with nothing in it. So best practice: fund your trust by transferring your real estate, bank accounts, LLCs, shares, other assets, whatever everybody's got into it. Okay. Number 4, improper beneficiary designations. Right. So now we know what beneficiaries are. We put them on our life insurance. We put them on other accounts. Right. The mistake is naming the wrong people or forgetting to update the designations on IRAs, 401ks, insurance, etc. Right. Again, it's almost like put it on the annual one tickler, annual, or like we looked earlier about every 3 to 5 years, somewhere between there. I think makes sense for most people. Consequence: inherited assets go to the wrong person or create tax liabilities. Again, puts us in the no bueno zone. And Uncle Sam and the courts are like, oh yeah, don't worry, we got you, and they take a chunk. And there's nothing you can do about it. Best practice: regularly review and update beneficiary forms, especially after life events, marriage, divorce, birth, death. Starting a business, shutting down a business, buying assets, selling assets. Right? Simple stuff. Here is number 5. Mistake number 5: failing to plan for incapacity. We kind of mentioned this earlier, and here's the situation we can end up in. The mistake is ignoring powers of attorney or medical directives. Consequence: court-appointed guardianship or conservatorship. Again, if we don't have a plan for our family, the government will. Does anybody want the government to be in charge of their family or their estate? No. I don't think that's ever passed on any ballot. No voter will be like, oh yeah, sure. Just take it. It's fine. We trust you. All right, so best practice: execute a durable power of attorney for finances and an advanced healthcare directive for medical. Okay, simple stuff. It's pretty straightforward. All right, mistake number 6: improper use of joint ownership. Well, that's like adding children or others as joint tenants on property to avoid probate. I've seen this in real estate. It's kind of unfortunate. So here's the consequence: you got gift tax issues, loss of control, exposure to creditors, and again, sadly, on the intangible, non-financial side, the family side, it creates all kinds of conflict, and heartache, and it just complicates the process when something could have been straightforward, and everyone could mourn and get on with life, but not just future family conflict, but also future complications in the whole process, which again, that's that downward spiral of it ultimately costs more, to work through that mess. So here's the best practice: you can use trusts or transfer on death deeds, not joint ownership, to avoid unintended legal and tax consequence. Okay, so let's look at number 7: not integrating estate planning with asset protection. So quite literally, number 7 here is people who separate module 6 from module 5. But if you remember early on, right, the key to see these although I did break them down into separate modules, they merge together, right? It's like the transmission with the engine, right? Like you got to have both, you know, and understand how they integrate, right? Very simple. So, the mistake is leaving high valued assets exposed in our personal name or inside trusts with no liability protection. So, the consequences lawsuits, judgment, creditor claims wipe us out. It's tragic. People work their butts off, honest, good, hardworking people for decades, only to find themselves with I mean, as you'll see in a minute, literally a few $1,000s in paperwork that could prevent this. It's heartbreaking. So, best practice: use LLCs, irrevocable trusts, multi-layered structures for real estate, businesses, and investments. Right? See the theme here? It's all about thinking in layers. Okay. All right. Mistake number 8: failing to consider the tax consequences. Again, that's the big boogeyman. If it ain't the government, meaning you know, um, and dealing with courts and attorneys and legal side, um, or creditors, or maliciously motivated heirs, relatives, people involved in your business, right? There's those threats, but obviously tax is a big one. So, mistake: overlooking capital gains, step up basis, estate tax thresholds, or IRA rules. Okay, that's what a lot of people own. A lot of people, when we're talking about generosity and being magnanimous, we are not referring to Uncle Sam as a recipient, okay? And that is, he don't need it. If he needs it, he'll print it. Trust me, he just proved that. He don't need our pennies and bennies, to keep the lights on. All right, so don't feel obligated for a penny more, and they're wishing well. Okay, keep that within the family. So the consequences: heirs pay avoidable taxes and penalties. Right, bottom line. It's really unfortunate. So the best practice: work with a tax strategist, and those are a couple names. Right, you can look some folks up. There's 3 folks. 2 of them I've hired personally and worked with them. The other is highly credible, and I put them on equal level of the other 2. But you can work with some of these high level folks. Tom Wheelwright, Mark Kohler. Mark was my guy for many years. Now we're with Anderson, which they'll get honorable mention here in a little bit too. So you can work with your tax strategist to use tax efficient strategies, right? Roth conversions, charitable trust, all these other trusts, okay? Alphabet soup of trusts. It's kind of crazy. All right. Number 9, neglecting to update the plan, right? Just like anything, you got to update it. Creating an estate plan and never revisiting again, okay? Something we can put on the tickler. There's actually a fun little strategy that I'm going to include as a bonus. I have actually several bonuses, surprise bonuses, far beyond the 7 that I even originally was including. But as I work through this program and get some of y'all's feedback and just really ponder on it deeply, I'm like, you know what? What can I do more for them? And I just want to really give you guys the best I possibly can. So there's a really neat when it comes to this right here. There's a way to do this, and that I think y'all are gonna love, especially with those with family. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. So obviously you got to update this thing, because if we don't, there's the consequences right there, and it gets ugly. Okay, and we lose a lot. So just taking a note real quick. All right. So best practice: review and update your estate plan again about every 2 to 3 years, or after major life, asset, or legal changes. Right? Makes sense. What are the factors that affect it? The system, um, and if any parts of the system, change, then let's, just like we would update a procedure. Hey, did I excuse me, did I make any changes to the system or equipment? Yes. Okay. Well, let's make sure the documentation associated with that asset is adjusted and updated, revised appropriately. All right. Number 10, DIY or incomplete documents. You can see the bookends between number 1 and number 10. Number 1 is you ain't got nothing. Number 10 is you try to do it yourself and be a cheap donkey. And yeah, didn't work out. And the donkey just dumped on you. So the mistake is using generic online forms, or even worse, going to Staples. I don't even know how old and obsolete office store stuff is. Consequence, of course, invalid, unenforceable documents, legal loopholes, misprotections. I mean, it's just a mess. It's really like a false sense of hope that can bring it all down, burn it all down. So best practices, of course, work with qualified elite estate planning attorneys, okay? Though, like those at Anderson Advisors or KQS Lawyers. Those are the two firms that I've personally hired and invested quite a bit in over the years. They're incredible. They absolutely live up to that description there. They are 100% qualified elite. And again, they're going to understand your unique family, financial, and tax situation. Okay. So a lot of this, I'll put all their info into the bonuses, so you'll have a future reference. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the top 10 mistakes. Another thought bomb, of course, from Mr. Mark Kohler. A true estate plan is not just a set of documents, right? It's a multi-layered blueprint for wealth preservation, tax optimization, asset protection, and legacy fulfillment. Okay, that's the idea. That's what it's all about. So let's look at some case studies. Case study number 1, the unfunded living trust. The mistake is trust created but never funded. So here is the scenario. A client was a retired couple in California. They had a $1.5 million home, $400,000 in investment accounts, and the scenario they found themselves in was the couple set up a revocable living trust with an online service. However, they never transferred the title of their home or investment accounts to the trust. Unfortunately, the husband passed away, the wife assumed the trust, covered all assets. Guess what? It didn't. The home and investment accounts went through California probate, which has statutory fees based on asset value. It's like percentage and tiers, right? So, bigger the pie, bigger my slice. You know, that's the government's way. That's literally how they think. It's insane. Instead of a flat fee, oh yeah, you know what? To process probate in California, it's $2,500. No. I mean, why would they do that? Why stop there, right? Why stop there when you can go, oh, let's go grab about 50 grand. Think about that. That's insane. Okay, insane. That's a typical little asset. See, they're under a couple million total, right? And then the probate fees alone were almost $50,000, and it can take years, right? Timeline, that's typical, 1 to 2 years before the heirs received anything, and the government got their slice. That's insane. Because you know what it would take? A tenth of that. So going back to ROI, this is a very specific number, so we can say, okay, is it really worth it though? I mean, do I have to? Like it's okay. We hem and haw about expenses as we should. We don't want to be a reckless, drunken sailor just throwing money everywhere. But to say, okay, what if it took $2,300 to $4,600 to set up my estate properly? That's a 10x to 20x savings, right? Or return on that investment, because they're going to take at least that. And then you add on top of it the emotional distress for the family, massive delays in asset distribution. So what if there was, I don't know, the daughter graduating, or the son needing a surgery and the daughter going to college? Like, you see these type of things. What if the timing was atrocious and it created compound casualties because the family couldn't use the resources when they needed it? You see what I'm saying? Like it can get messy, and you can have that perfect storm that can totally be prevented, right? All right. Case study number 1. Here's the lesson. A trust must be properly funded without retitling assets into the trust. It's legally useless, right? Makes sense. Work with a pro to verify asset alignment. Very simple. All right. Case study number 2, no planning for blended families. Now, this is a really common scenario, right? Many folks can find themselves in. So the mistake was the will only favored the spouse. It ignored the children from the first marriage. So here's the client was a business owner with 2 kids from his first marriage, remarried in his 60s, had a few million in business, $3 million business, about 700 in real estate, and the scenario was he created a simple will, leaving everything to his second wife, assuming she'd quote do the right thing and care for all the children. Well, there was no trust, no prenup, and no clear instructions. So here's the consequences. The second wife, inherited 100% of assets and cut out the children from his first marriage. The estate litigation ensued. Legal costs exceeded what? Yep, you got that right. Good to be an attorney, I suppose. They could have spent probably $2,500. You see what I'm saying about this? Like, it's 10 to 100x, right? 1,000 to 10,000% return on investment, right? That's sort of that whole, pennies today, bennies tomorrow, right? The business was forced into liquidation, losing over $1 million in value. You see what I'm saying? So it wasn't just the 250. Here's the $1 million. Well, let's look at the numbers. If you had about 3.5, right, in assets, that's about a third wiped out. That's sad, right? Completely avoidable, right? Carnage, just heartbreaking. All right, here is the lesson. The best practice. Always create a plan that addresses blended family dynamics with Q-tip trust, not for your ears, but for your assets. Lifetime gifting, or incentive trusts to protect the heirs and intent. All right. Number 3, case study number 3, joint tenancy disaster. This is a common thing we see in real estate as well. So the mistake is that they added the daughter as a joint tenant to, quote, avoid probate. Yeah. We've dodged that bullet. We've helped clients dodge this bullet specifically, right? It's like, well, you might want to check with the pros. I'm not sure that makes sense or is best for y'all. But people do it. The DIY. Oh, yeah, I heard that, just add my kid to blah, blah, blah. So joint tenant is co-owner, right? Meaning on the deed, they added the daughter. So the elderly widow in Arizona had a $500,000 home, $200K in a CD, and to avoid probate, quote, she added her daughter as a joint tenant on the home, meaning co-owner on the deed with mama, elderly mom. The daughter later got divorced, faced a civil judgment. Whoopsie. Well, the daughter's creditors placed a lien on the home. The widow was forced to refinance the house to clear the debt. $500,000 home was reduced to $350,000 in net value due to court and legal fees. Sad, right? It's really unfortunate. Because again, what is that? Elderly widow. She only got so much, man, right? She only got so much to live on, to support herself. And boom, ugly mess. So here is the lesson in best practice. Joint tenancy exposes your property to creditor risks, lawsuits, and divorce. Use revocable trust or beneficiary deeds instead. Okay? Yeah. There's always a better way most of the time. All right. Case study number 4, outdated beneficiary designation. Well, the mistake was they didn't update life insurance after divorce. Yikes. So the client, the tech exec with about $1 million in life insurance, well, he divorced, but he never changed the beneficiary from his policy. So he passed unexpectedly in a car accident. Guess what? The ex-wife is like, I appreciate that Willy Wonka lottery ticket. The ex-wife received 100% of the life insurance payout. The current spouse and minor children got nothing. That stings. Family went to court, lost the case, beneficiary designation trumped the will. So there you go. Very specific case study. And the costs, right? Really sad. All right. Case study number 5. Oh, sorry, number 4. Here's the lesson real quick. Obviously, review the beneficiaries regularly, IRAs, insurance, retirement accounts, other assets that we may own, especially after major life events. Okay. Number 5. No succession plan for family business. Again, this is going to resonate with a lot of us. Okay. So when we don't have a buy-sell agreement or business transition plan, succession plan, all the same, right? Um, Here's what type of predicament we can find ourselves in. So the client had three siblings that co-owned $5 million landscaping company. The father died without naming a successor or creating a buy-sell agreement. One sibling wanted to sell, the others wanted to keep running it. You can see this common kind of predicament. So no clear voting, no valuation or transition plan, and yeah, when you get the damn courts and attorneys involved, boy, do they ain't they're generously in their favor. Let's just say that. They make sure they don't leave empty pocketed. So the consequences of this, the internal litigation and family split, business value dropped in half in just a couple years due to mismanagement. This is a big distraction, right? It's totally disruptive to a small family-owned business, right? Key employees left, vendor contracts lapsed, market share decline. Like just you could see that kind of perfect storm just eroding and downward spiral. So what is the lesson in best practice? All of us business owners must have an estate integrated succession plan, buy-sell agreement, LLC operating agreement, key person insurance to preserve the business. Did you know you can take out life insurance and put the beneficiary as your business? Doesn't have to be an individual. It can be an individual or an entity. In fact, did you know that some of the biggest franchises, I won't name names, but some of the biggest franchises that you know, like food and drink, you know what I'm saying? Drive-throughs all over the nation and the world. When you buy their franchise, one of their requirements is you shall get X dollars. Typically, they have two commas in that number in life insurance for you, Mr. Franchisee, so that if you get hit by a bus that's struck by lightning, okay, and a meteoroid smashes you, at the same time, guess what? We got an insurance policy on you so that we can use those funds to restructure. Kind of fascinating, right? Cool stuff. All right. Pro tips from the experts. These are my guys. These are my guys right here. I'll just quote them with all their wisdom. Estate planning is not a one-size-fits-all process. It's not just about death. It's about control, privacy, protection, and legacy. Oddly enough, Mr. Clint Coons, I do believe, was born and raised up in Poulsbo or Bainbridge, and he's got offices in Tacoma and Vegas. He's one of the partners in Anderson Advisors. The estate plan should be tax efficient, lawsuit resistant, and wealth multiplying. See, that's the thing. It's not just like, okay, we want to lock it down, put it in a time capsule. You see what I'm saying? And put it in a safe and put it in a vault. You see what I'm saying? In a safe deposit box. Yes, there's that part of this whole estate planning. But it should also what? Continue to perpetually prosper, like continue to grow, right? Beyond us. That's the ultimate dream. That's hitting the trifecta, right? We want to protect it, we want to pass it on, right? And then we want it to perpetually prosper, like continue to grow. Kind of neat, right? Like it's pretty awesome stuff. All right. Good estate planning should preserve wealth, prevent conflict, and protect your loved ones, legally, financially, and emotionally. Again, Mr. Mark Kohler, my old guy. All right. So, again, we can work hard, but we have to work smart too, right? We have to work smart. If we're going to work hard on a smart plan, right? You can't just work hard and brute force everything. We do have to come up from air. We do have to get our bearings periodically. We do have to adjust course, right? Periodically. Okay. So here's again, quick recap. Why the rich get richer and poor get poorer. They have abundant focus mindset, right? Focus meaning follow one course until successful. Don't chase 17 different things at once. You know, they invest in themselves first. Hey, what all of us have done in this 6-week program. It's brilliant. Go infinite ROI. High level of financial literacy, which is, again, why we are here together. This program was created for these two. So you can invest in yourself, then in turn invest in your family and your team. Also, elevate your level of financial literacy, right? We have to be able to speak, read, write, speak the math and the vocabulary of financials. It's not rocket science. Pretty straightforward. Active investors, right? The rich get richer and the poor get poorer because the rich are active investors. They're hands-on to some degree. They're not just passively clueless, pay and pray type of hopeful for the best. They focus on ideal investments, which we talked about previously. They prioritize assets over liabilities, and they protect and perpetuate, like we covered today. They protect and perpetuate what they have built. That's why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. So here's the thing: uh, are we protecting the poor? For example, it's pretty straightforward when we say the rich protect and perpetuate their assets, their wealth, their all that. But you can do the same thing? Poor people do the same thing. They protect the mindset of, oh no, that won't work. I can never do that. Oh yeah, the government will take care of me. They perpetuate that mindset and those habits, right? It's sad, but it's all the same. So what are we amplifying and or protecting, and what are we perpetuating, right? Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. All depends on what it is, right? But ultimately, the rich, the financially successful, right, obsessively focus on what we own and control, and we ignore and remain barely aware of all the rest, all the noise and nonsense in the world. The rule of 100. This is a very tactical, practical. So I include this in nearly every um, module because I want to break this down for us, right? We don't have to go to, go take a college course on this stuff, right? You don't have to go buy 10 books on it or anything like that. Just invest 100 hours a year developing any skill or discipline, right? This is the rule of 100. What is that? That's about 20 minutes a day. Find 20 minutes a day, or an hour a week, right? A couple hours a week, and guess what? You'll be better than 95% of the world in that discipline and skill within a year. Within a year, that's it. This is what successful people do. It don't matter if it's finger painting. It don't matter if it's balloon blowing and tying, right? It don't matter if it's driving a race car, or painting something, or um, investing. Seriously, it don't matter. Fixing pipes, fixing roofs, fixing cars, trucks. Nothing compounds like consistency. So breaking something down, again, prioritizing what's most important. Okay, well, this is where we have to be honest with ourselves. Okay, which module do I need to focus on first? Am I making enough money? Okay, cool. I'm making enough. Cool. Now I'm going to focus on managing it, right? Okay, I'm going to manage, I'm going to optimize, get my level 3 in. And then once I accomplish all 4 core C's, right, in managing module, guess what? Well, then I can start multiplying. But the good news is, while I'm working on my 4 core C's, right, coming debt free, building reserves, right, 12 months of reserves, high, and then having a excellent credit score, that could take 3 months to 3 years. Well, what do I do in the meantime? Because that's just going to, run on autopilot. Debts are going to get paid down, credit's going to improve, reserves, emergency CYA funds going to build up. Okay, what do I do in the meantime? 3 months to 3 years. Well, this is what we do. We learn to become an active investor, right? In whatever way we want. It could be our own business for many of us. It could be like, well, I'm going to do stocks. I'm going to day trade. Cool. Nothing wrong with that. Or I'm going to get into real estate. Find a way to, but ideally, I want to either be involved, own, or be involved, right, in one of the 2 ideal investments. Guess what? They're all accessible to everyone because they're all different scales. There's different, styles and types and all that. That's what's neat. So that's the progression. And applying this, investing in ourselves, doing 20 minutes ish, a couple hours a week, nothing compounds like that, right? There's just nothing in the world that does like that. Okay, here's some final thoughts and reminders that what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. Emerson. And the mind that opens to a new idea never comes back to its original size. So part of the purpose, and for this program that we've all gone through together these last 6 weeks is to hopefully expand your mind to new possibilities and knowing that it will never shrink back. Now you've got a glimpse of something bigger, better, or at least different that maybe you never knew existed or considered before. And that, my hope, wish, and prayer is that it'll benefit you and yours, you know, not just you or your family, but maybe your employees, maybe your colleagues, people that, you can share some of these ideas, or the opportunity, what I'm building here in Free Club. This is just a glimpse. This is the first like pilot, program, of many, and, so share it with others, you know, um, and I'd love to hear y'all's feedback after this, once you're done with this last module. Okay, last thought bomb. The goal of an estate planning isn't just to transfer assets; it's to control the outcome, right? Control the outcome. Part of being an active investor, part of being a winner, right? We obsess over what we own and control. So we use trusts, legal entities, customized plans to ensure our intentions are honored, right? Again, Toby Overt Anderson. Remember, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I hope somehow, some way throughout this program, y'all have started to change the way you look at certain things for the better, to benefit you and those you care about. So, um, that's pretty much it. As always, I'll leave you with the reminder of all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it's ridiculed. Second, it's violently opposed. And third, it is accepted as self-evident. So hopefully the truths that you've discovered and, and learned in these last, throughout this program, have been helpful. And, sometimes they're depending on where we're at in life and what we're struggling with and what we're excited about, you might meet some of these concepts and truths at these different stages, and that's just part of the process. Why I share it, it's part of change. It's part of learning and growing, right? Is going through these stages, right? It's just not a bad thing. It's part of the process. So, as always, massive action defeats massive fear. Period. End of story. None of this matters if we don't do anything with it. Okay. And the next step for everybody who's part of this program is to, one, keep an eye on the resources, because I'm going to dump all the bonuses and the guides and the checklist and tools um, over this weekend and into next week, so that y'all have plenty of time to review that, go back over the previous modules, and then second piece, my friends, is please schedule your one-on-one with me. So um, we can do it here on Teams, or we can do it over the phone, or we can ideally do it face to face in person, which that's the part I'm most excited about, is really helping you think through, work through, overcome any obstacles that you're facing, or seize any opportunities that you are excited for. Um, that's my purpose and plan, and I look forward to being here for y'all. I'll leave y'all with a few questions, to ponder. Ask yourself, what are your goals? Do you know all you need to achieve them? Do you have all you need to make your dreams come true, or the dreams of your family? If you could do anything in life, what would it take? And what's your plan to protect and perpetuate all that you've earned and built and created? Because if we don't have a plan, right, if we fail to plan, we plan to fail. So, make sure y'all think about these things. I do often, all right? But it's been a pleasure. Thank you for hanging out here. And couldn't be more excited for the future of the Free Club and all that the adventures ahead for us. You got any questions, brother?
No, man, that was awesome. No, I love the whole thing. It's great. Actually, this one today really got me thinking. It'd been on my mind for a while, especially because Kirsten and we've established two companies
Hmm.
and we have not updated, and we were just the people that have a will,
Yeah.
and we haven't updated any of this stuff, and it's been on my mind, but it really like the case studies really started to ingrain like, man, we could be on a very bad path fast.
Yeah. It is kind of
Something
scary. You're like,
is,
yeah,
yeah.
true.
It's like I need to call those guys like tomorrow, Sunday. Be like, hey, can I get in here next week, dude?
Yep.
Yeah. No, but that's great. And then I love it too. There was I'm trying to remember the other I'm part of this other like coaching group or whatever for contractors,
Oh,
and
cool.
that focus thing is so big for them. They talk about, really as a business owner, entrepreneur, your biggest investment that you're going to make actually is your business.
Yes.
It's not just a like a job, lifestyle, or whatever. It is literally your biggest asset. You're pouring hundreds of thousands of dollars, everything. So you really need to be laser focused on what you do. So whatever it is, focus on that, invest, believe in yourself, and just push on. So I love that too. It's very aligned.
Cool. That's beautiful, man. Um, yeah, I love hearing that, and appreciate the feedback, brother. It means a lot. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're enjoying it and getting a lot out of it. Um, that's the whole purpose for us being here and me creating this. To really pay it forward
Yeah.
every way I can. So awesome, buddy. Well, um, thank you again for coming and hanging out. It's great to see you, and I look forward to connecting soon. I know we got some things to follow up. I got some updates for you offline
Sweet.
after today. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it'll be fun, buddy. But
Cool,
y'all
man.
take care. Enjoy your
Yeah.
weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. See ya.
See you, bro.